Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the ultimate blueprint, a foundational document that literally shapes the daily lives of over a billion people. We're talking about the Constitution of India, and we're going to unpack exactly how a massively diverse and complex nation actually holds itself together.
To really wrap our heads around what a constitution is, I want you to picture something for a second. Think of your absolute favorite sport or board game. Got it? Okay, now, what happens to that game if there are zero rules? What if there's no official rule book for the referee or the players to check? It would be total, absolute chaos, right? Without an agreed-upon set of rules, the game completely breaks down. You literally can't play it.
So let's take that analogy and scale it all the way up to the national level. That is exactly what a constitution is. It's a country's ultimate rulebook. It prevents total chaos in a massive society by defining the political system, building the actual structure of the government, and, crucially, outlining the rights and duties of its citizens. It is the baseline agreement for how we all live together. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, India's ultimate rulebook. Second, drafting the Constitution. Third, core aspects and duties. Fourth, values of the preamble. And finally, a living document.
All right, let's jump into Part 1, India's Ultimate Rulebook.
This document does a massive amount of heavy lifting. It isn't just some boring list of things you can't do. It actively shapes the entire political system. It outlines exactly how the government is formed and structured, all the way from the national parliament right down to local governance. It clearly defines the functions of the different branches so no single part takes over. It sets the guiding principles for how the country should be run, and, most importantly for us, it details the rights you have as a citizen alongside the duties you owe to society. It touches literally every facet of civic life.
And you know, we actually celebrate this rulebook every single year. The Republic Day Parade is this vibrant, massive, real-world celebration of the exact day the Indian Constitution came into effect. The incredibly organized marching, the diverse cultural displays, the sheer scale of the whole thing, it's basically a reflection of a nation moving forward together, coordinated by the very rules and principles laid out in that ultimate rulebook. But a document this powerful certainly doesn't just appear out of thin air.
Which brings us to Part 2, drafting the Constitution.
Just imagine being in the room where it happened, with the Constituent Assembly. Right in the fiery mist of the independence struggle from British rule, these leaders had to sit down and figure out how to actually govern themselves. They were tasked with building a unified rulebook for a culturally diverse, vastly complex, and massive country. I mean, it was an absolutely monumental undertaking.
Just to appreciate the sheer scale of their task, look at the big questions they had to wrestle with. Who gets the right to vote in this brand new democracy? How do we keep executive, legislative, and judicial powers completely separate to prevent tyranny? How in the world do we guarantee that every single individual's fundamental rights are respected? What's the process for amendments when the rules inevitably need to change? And in a country this huge, what exactly should the relationship be between the center and the states? Answering just one of those is tough, but all of them? For our brand new nation, a staggering challenge.
But the framers knew that just writing the rules down on paper wasn't a magic fix. This is perfectly captured in a quote from Dr. Rajinder Prasad, India's first president. He noted that the successful working of democratic institutions requires a willingness to respect the viewpoint of others, capacity for compromise and accommodation. He really believed that a great country required hard work and, above all, a great moral regeneration. Basically, the rulebook only works if the people have the moral character to actually follow it. With that context, let's see how this machinery actually runs.
Moving right along to Part 3, core aspects and duties. So, the Constitution balances the immense power of the state with the people through three main pillars. First, fundamental rights. These are the essential protections guaranteed to every single individual. They're your absolute shield. Second, fundamental duties. These are the responsibilities expected of you as a citizen, because hey, rights don't exist without responsibilities. And third, the directive principles of state policy, or DSP. These are the guidelines the government is expected to follow when making policies. I actually want to pause on the DSP-SP for a second, because it's really fascinating. These directive principles aren't just dry bureaucratic suggestions. They represent the very essence of the social and economic vision the framers had for India. It's their ultimate blueprint for a fair, equitable society. It doesn't just tell the government how to rule, it tells them what kind of nation they should be striving to build. So, where do all these rules get their moral authority? Let's take a look.
Part 4. Values of the Preamble. You can think of the preamble as the introduction to the Constitution, sure, but it is so much more than a preface. It holds the absolute essence of the guiding values for both government policies and how citizens should behave. It is literally the philosophical heart and the moral compass of the entire document. Let's look at a few of the really profound promises made right here in the preamble.
First up is liberty. The Constitution guarantees that there are no unreasonable restrictions on citizens regarding what they think, how they wish to express those thoughts, and the way they choose to follow up their thoughts in action. It is the fundamental freedom to just be yourself. Next is the commitment to a secular society. This means citizens have the complete freedom to follow any religion they choose, and crucially, there's no official state religion. The government is strictly mandated to treat all religious beliefs and practices with equal respect. And finally, equality. The ultimate rulebook decrees that all are equal before the law, period. It sets a clear mandate to end traditional social inequalities and demands that the government ensures equal opportunity for absolutely everyone, no matter their background. These values are incredibly timeless, but as we know, society isn't static. So, how does a document written over 70 years ago still govern a modern superpower? Which leads us to Part 5, a living document. Here is arguably one of the most brilliant features of the Indian Constitution. It is a living document. The framers were remarkably wise. They knew for sure they couldn't predict the future, so they built in a specific process for amendments. This means the Constitution can actually be improved and updated as the country's needs inevitably change. It bends, adapts, and grows right alongside the society it governs. So, that leaves us with a really fascinating thought to chew on. As technology continues to advance, as our culture shifts, and as our society keeps evolving, what new rules might our ultimate rulebook need to address tomorrow? Think about stuff like artificial intelligence, or climate change, or digital privacy. The real beauty of a living document is that it's ready for those exact challenges. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the Constitution today. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.